Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode. Despite the Jedi being featured as the heroes in nearly every platform we see them in, especially the films, where the Jedi are always the heroes, a lot of the dark deeds of the Jedi have gone undiscovered by the more widespread fanbase. And today, I wanted to highlight one of the most sinister things that the Jedi have ever done, and something that actually occurred during the waning days of the Clone Wars. This isn't a story the Jedi would tell you, and it's not a story that appears in any of the films. This actually comes from Dark Disciple, realizing a common theme, that to understand the sins of the Jedi, you have to delve a little bit deeper. This is something that I think the Jedi would have struggled a great deal to come back from. That being actually considering killing members of their order that they questioned turned to the dark side during the Clone Wars. And today we will explain why. But first, a brief message from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by my Patreon. I have made the decision to relaunch my Patreon page in hopes that I can use the donations to build a podcast set and relaunch a new Star Wars podcast. A podcast is something that I've wanted to do for a very long time now, and we even have a few episodes up on the channel already. However, I want to revamp it with the best quality possible, streaming the podcast first to all of you from a nice professional set with great audio and a camera setup. This is uncharted territory for me as I've never appeared on camera before, but I'm very excited. The podcast obviously will be all about Star Wars, from debates, news, and way more, hopefully delving into some of the more controversial aspects of Star Wars and having in-depth discussions about them. Anyway, the link to donate will be in the description down below, and for the first little while, I would like the patrons to determine where the conversation of the podcast actually goes. As a perk of donating, you can submit topics that you want to see highlighted on the podcast itself. More information will be on the page. Thank you guys so much for listening to this little pitch, and even if you decide not to donate, simply watching the channel helps and means a lot. We are hoping of getting a consistent podcast launch sometime in mid-July, or potentially late July, but I'm really excited to start this brand new journey. Now, let's get on with the video. The idea that the Jedi would actually kill their own is quite disturbing. Normally, when a Jedi falls to the dark side of the Force, the Jedi Order does their best to reform them. But in an era of wartime, the Clone Wars that is, that means there were much more serious consequences if a Jedi turned. As unfortunately, the Jedi were no longer simple peacekeepers, but rather military commanders and the leaders of the Clone Wars conflict. Obviously, this meant that they had access to sensitive information about the war itself as well as the Republic, meaning that if a Jedi turned and embraced the dark side of the Force, this could be detrimental to the overall Clone Wars and the Republic if they chose to join with the enemy and the Separatists, or worse, the Sith. Because of this, towards the end of the Clone Wars, the Jedi Council even debated amongst themselves whether they should execute Jedi that turned to the dark side. It was a major decision for the Jedi Council to even discuss assassinating Dooku. By the end of the Clone Wars though, one very specific and important Jedi turned to the dark side of the Force that the Council became aware of and then raised deep concern over. This Jedi was Quinlan Vos, who had a ton of sensitive information about the Council and the Republic, and if he chose to disclose that information to Dooku, could mean the end of the Clone Wars and defeat of the Republic entirely. This led the Council to debate this question. Should a Jedi fall to the dark side of the Force be executed to ensure that they do not reveal military secrets to the enemy, and in the process endanger millions if not billions of lives? By the end of the war, the number of Jedi that were turning to the dark side of the Force was growing exponentially, from individuals such as Barriss Offee to Pong Krell, with Pong Krell being more disturbing as he was a Jedi Master. When Jedi Master Quinlan Vos turned to the dark side of the Force is when the Jedi Council had this heated debate amongst themselves. Again, these aren't simply normal Jedi, these are masters and trusted Jedi that have served faithfully for decades, causing deep concern, with individuals such as Mace Windu being unsure of the correct method, but Jedi like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda speaking out against the idea of executing their own. This is very important as later Mace would want to kill Chancellor Palpatine after he was revealed as a Sith Lord, bypassing any trial, which was a major reason why Anakin turned on Mace, as essentially Mace broke the Jedi code in this moment, and had been blinded by destroying the dark side entirely. This is so tragic, as all of the Jedi that fought in the war were not given a choice, and a life of a military leader was certainly not one that many of them signed up for in the first place. They wanted to be peace and order keepers of the galaxy, not generals. The Clone Wars forced the Jedi into a role they did not belong and did not fill. Some of the Jedi that turned to the dark side of the Force turned for very understandable reasons, and the very council that threw them into the war was debating whether or not they should be killed because of it. Again, in the past, Jedi that turned to the dark side would simply be exiled, and then would attempted to be reformed by Jedi Masters. But this was wartime, and the Jedi had become a creature that none of them recognized. Therefore, deeming this the darkest moment for the Jedi during all of the Clone Wars, of course excluding Order 66 and the Jedi Purge. The fact that the Jedi had fallen so far from grace that they would execute their own, playing directly into the hands of Sidious. Anyway, my friends, what are your guys' thoughts on this, and this great decision that the Jedi Council debated amongst themselves? Again, if you're interested, don't forget to check out the Patreon link at the top of the description down below. As always, my friends, your support means the literal world to me. May the Force be with you, and have a great day.